Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Big Red Machine. I am, of course, your host, Chris Reddy, aka Snaggle J, General Manager of the TGS Cincinnati Reds. This is a rest of the offseason slash hybrid into the spring training look at what has happened. Um, so, again, if you want to see what we did in the first half of the offseason, make sure you check out the last episode. This episode, we're going to talk about some of the moves we made in the latter half. And then also, we're going to take a look at some of our deeper position battles and kind of a state of the roster action. I do not remember where we left off. I think we talked about all of these trades already. And I think we are into January. You will notice I'm still battling a cough. So some periodical muting will continue to occur as I cannot seem to shake the cough. So we did have a few more moves later in the offseason. We signed a couple of catchers, TJ Gregoire and Yalen Soriano. Again, we came into the offseason with no catchers, adding to the options. A couple of guys with good defensive profiles, 60-60 there and 65-50 there. A couple of guys that they're not definitely big hitters. They're cheap. They both hit lefties better, so they're going to try to carve out some at-bats that way. We'll see how it goes. We made a minor trade with the A's. The A's were in search of some third base options, so we got rid of Randy Cardwell, who, again, just totally blocked. No way we could really get him into the lineup. I felt like we had some different options. Third base was definitely a spot where we had an excess of bodies. So again, really just trying to move him around. We took a flyer on 21-year-old reliever Thomas Linares, who has already improved a little bit in the movement and contact, but obviously we're going to need some TCR to get him up to be an acceptable reliever. But sometimes you got to take chances. And a big trade that we made was we traded Luke Engel, Aaron Kroll, Scott Rothman, and Daniel Contreras to the Nationals, picking up Ryan Agostino and $3 million in cash. So the $3 million in cash was to offset Agostino's contract, which is $14.5 million this year. I think, again, this was probably a trade that made me moderately uncomfortable. I feel like, again, it's Agostino's a nice piece, 60, 60, 65. He does have a little bit of stuff room to go there. Throws hard, has a mixed bag of results. Again, a guy that can slot in towards the front half of our rotation. We gave up Engel, who was a guy that we got in the Rule 5. Does have the potential to be an absolutely elite bullpen arm, but we really didn't see any development after we got him. We got a little tiny bit of stuff. We did get some movement and some control, but he kind of fizzled out there. Again, he could be a really good piece for the Nats. Kroll was a guy that we got from the Astros in an earlier trade, so, we didn't really get to know him that well. Contreras was a guy that we drafted a few years ago. I liked his profile, but he just wasn't developing the stuff. He's only 22. He's got some time to go. Could end up being a really solid piece for the Nats. And then Rothman was the guy I didn't want to give up, especially after giving up Cardwell. I really didn't want to give up Rothman as well. But with Redford Jones and some other potential third base options kicking around in the minors still, I felt like, we could make this trade and get an arm. Now, obviously, the big thing for Agostino is he's a free agent at the end of the year. So we will see what an extension potentially looks like there, because obviously we would like to keep him around. So we will see if he's open to such a thing and if we can get it in to, at a reasonable amount. Again, could be a guy that, he's still relatively young. If we can get him on a reasonable length contract, we'll see how that goes. So I'm happy with this trade. Again, really just continuing to revamp our starting rotation. with, Agostino and Stutz and Jacobson, there's going to be a lot of different options. As we continue on, minor trade, we picked up Carson Davidson for some cash. The extra $1,000 was more of kind of a joke. I said $500K, and then I said, well, how about 501? And that was kind of where we settled. Davison gives us a improvement, defensively in the infield. I think we had talked in a previous episode about Roman Tannen. Obviously, Roman Tannen, not a great hitter, but Davison is an upgrade defensively. So again, if we have spots in the infield, Kraus was not great at second base last year. He can play third, he can play short. If Dainzer goes down with an injury, Davison's a guy that can fill in. He is under contract for longer term, but that is less than what we pay Roman Tannen now. So, we will see what ends up happening there. So that was just more of a depth issue. And then our last big move of the offseason, I think, we made a couple more, but we did sign Ryan McPherson to be in the back end of our bullpen, 70, 50, 60. We got him for $6 million. One guy that we were really in on till the very end was Cadman Reeder. Cadman Reeder ends up getting $50 million plus over 3 years. I think the last offer we made to him was in the neighborhood of 43, 44 million over 3 years. And then the deal just got jumped a lot, I think, because there was some back and forth. I really was looking at a Reeder-McPherson kind of combo to kind of be able to partner them together. We get McPherson. Reeder we moved on from. So again, a nice piece here. It's only a 1-year deal. Team option for the second year. So again, at the most, it's going to cost us $7.5 million. We'll see how he does. When we turn it over to February, not a whole lot happening here. We did have a couple of minor free agent signings with TJ Filippelli and Diego Palomino. Again, just adding bullpen arms, $2 million and $5 million respectively. So a lot of overhaul, and we're going to take a look at that when we take a look at our spring roster. Couple of minor league signings, and I think that was pretty much the way we go. So that wrapped up our offseason. Very, very active, lots of trades, lots of new players brought in. But the core, especially offensively, very, very, very much intact. So when we look at what we've got kicking around at the spring, Agostino, Jacobson, and Stutz, obviously the three guys we brought in kind of have a leg up in terms of rotation spots. And then really those last three spots, there's 5 guys that I think I'm strongly considering putting in there, and then possibly a different option as well. But we're looking at Deruin, who led the team in wins last year. Jonas Guzman, who he got a bit hot late. We'll see where that goes. Johnny Boss, who had a nice second half of the season. Rylan San Juan, who spent the last season in Double-A, but had a nice season there. Newland Boyle, who's a movement contact guy, had a 3.04 ERA in Double-A in 186 innings last year. And James Gaspard, who we called up and was not great. Those are kind of the 6 guys that we're really looking at for those last 2 spots in the rotation, because obviously we're not going to run a 6-man in, I think I might have said 3 earlier, but we're only looking at 2. We're only going to run a 5-man, of course. Now, with the number of reliever arms we have around, obviously opener follower situations are an option as well, where we could run one of those as an opener. Again, we have one lefty in the pen with Bazin. That is by design. Obviously, we do have our park is a little bit stronger for the right-handed hitters, so we really want to have the one lefty, and we're going to probably go righty. Obviously, Owen Farner's probably going to factor in there as well as a long man. Could be an opener situation as well, but we'll see. I don't think we want to go out there and have everybody turned around right-handed. It would probably be the opposite. Probably go righty opener and then go to somebody like Farner on the backside. But yeah. Filippelli, O'Brien, who had a great season in Double-A, really on the outside looking in. Palomino, Behringer, Allman. So in reality, we still have 17 pitchers in camp So with 17 pitchers in camp, obviously we're only going to keep 12 or 13, depending on the configuration we use. So I think the starters is where we're going to see a lot of give. And then obviously we're going to, we have that redone bullpen where Bazin, Behringer, and Allman are going to kind of be the holdovers with Farner. And, we're going to see what these new guys, McPherson, Filippelli, Palomino, can do. So that's kind of where we're looking at on the pitcher side. On the hitting side, it's more clear but less clear. So we'll kind of go through this positionally. So again, pretty much our entire line. Now again, obviously we have this configuration in a certain way just for training and stuff. So this in no way reflects what our actual lineup would be. But again, we are returning every starter from last year. Some of whom have been usurped. So obviously, we're going to be having, Segura and Modesty are going to be first base DH combo. Catcher is where we have the most unknown at the moment. We have 4 in camp. We have Gregoire and Soriano, the free agent additions. We have rookie JT Grishaber, who has the highest catcher ability and also has the best bat against lefties. Has a really nice bat. Is actually doesn't have any splits, but the bat against lefties is nice. But he does have some development left to do for his defense. And then we have Grover Siedzinski, who after contributing to the team pretty well in 2029, spent the entire season in the minors last year. But he's back and, probably going to be our starting catcher versus righties. And then we will see kind of what happens. The other 3 are going to battle it out to see who's going to be the catcher versus lefties. That's kind of how things are shaking out right now. Obviously, again, first base and DH, we have Mondesi and Segura. I think Mondesi is going to end up being the first baseman just because he's a little better defensively with the ratings. So most likely we will see Cody Mondesi play first, and Rico Segura will be the DH. Jaden Krause, who is doing some training in the outfield, is slated to start the season as our second baseman. We've got Nat Rowlands up here. He's on the 40-man. We're getting him some ABs. Want to keep him fresh in case of injuries. Third base, we've got Redford Jones. We've got Hugo Huerta up here just getting some experience in. Shortstop right now, again, we have Noel Carlson up. Again, we have him playing at second for some training. Brian Dainzer obviously will be the returning as a starter after an all-star season in 2030. And then also we have Carson Davidson. In the outfield, we have a lot of outfielders. Obviously, we have our starting guys back. Ledford in center field. Right field, we have our new pickup, Alex Andrade. And then we have a lot of other options here. So we have obviously Woody Coons, who was the Rookie of the Year in the National League in 2030. And to be quite honest, he's kind of on the outside looking in right now in terms of playing time. He can't really play the field, and obviously DH is going to be occupied by one of the big boppers. So Woody Coons' path to training, or to playing time, is very limited. We've been actively trying to move him in the offseason. Haven't had any really good bites yet. But we will see kind of where he fits under this team. But right now, it's looking like a V-right pinch hitter might be in his future. And that might be usurped by a guy we picked up from the Angels, J.C. Roberson, who, again, very strong against righties, probably going to be our primary pinch hitter against righties. Also not great defensively, but again, for that V-right pinch hitting role, he might be the guy. He might have the inside track there over the National League Rookie of the Year from last season. We're giving Don Lanzalota a look. An interesting bat profile, especially against righties. Again, going to be hard to find the bats for him at 24. I think we're kind of showcasing what he can do, maybe use him as some trade fodder. Dylan Lugo, same kind of thing. A very, very interesting profile here with the really high gap power and eye, and not so much so in the contact and the avoid case. Again, another guy with 45 range, just not really getting it done in the outfield. Max Zavarella, who was the guy that we picked up in the Andrade trade, probably going to start the season as our starting left fielder. Doesn't have splits. Hits the same way against both 55, 60, 70. So very, very good defense in the outfield compared to some of the guys we have. And then in right field, again, we have Alex McDonald just getting some ABs. He's probably on the verge of losing his spot on the roster. Again, we brought him in last year as kind of a V left kind of guy. Really didn't live up to the hype. I mean, in 51 at bats in the big leagues, he hit 130. Definitely not great, but we're gonna give him a run here in the spring and see what he can do. He's hitting 417 so far. And then at the bottom here, we have our best buddy Josh Brecken, who again, I don't really know where Josh Brecken gets at bats at this point. He can't play the field, at least not the outfield. He can play some first base. He's DH mostly. I will admit, I am a little surprised. I mean, I know why. I'm a little surprised the interest in Josh Brecken is not higher. Again, especially if you have, a double centric stadium, an Oracle or PNC. He has, he hits the same against both sides, but I get it. He's not a prototypical DH. Obviously with the DH, you want the power. He did take an uptick in the power last year where the slugging went up to just under 500. But again, a lot of that was due to our change in park. But yeah, as a guy making, under $1 million, I am a little bit surprised there was not more interest. I think the biggest thing comes down to is everybody's got 5 guys like Josh Brecken in their minors. So I understand. I think it's just unfortunate. You know what? Brecken's one of those guys that I don't want to take for granted that he's around, because if Mondesi or Segura goes down, he can fill in. Obviously, he can't do what they do, but you know what? He's not a black hole with the twig. So obviously, if we did get a deal for him, we'd probably try to move him, but otherwise we'll probably keep him around. Again, cheap guy. Again, with all of the guys, we have 23 players, still position players. When we get rid of a couple of catchers, that takes us down to 21. That means we're still going to have 7 or 8 cuts from this list. Obviously, there's some obvious ones, guys like Huerta and probably Nat Rowlands, and a couple of the outfielders, like Lugo. But there's going to be some really tough cuts in this hitting group. And I think, this is the good bad of how we've approached the construction of this team, right? I've said it every single episode of the BRM. Asset acquisition, having options, multiple options at multiple positions, and really just making sure that, that we can have choices. And I think we're kind of there now, right? Noel Carlson is almost there. He's got a little bit of development left to do. 5 points at 4 of the 5 hitting thing, but he's getting there. He's almost there. So, when he's ready to take over as second baseman, we have to be ready for that. And hence why we're getting Krause ready to play in the outfield. And so obviously with those options, comes tough choices, right? We really liked having Nat Rowlands, in the lineup. And I mean, he's performed admirably. At the big league level, he's a 285 hitter. But 285 with horrible defense and no power, it's all about using those assets and upgrading. That's why I think one thing I'm distinctly worried about is that we push the chips in a little too soon. Yes, we still have assets in the cupboard. Yes, we still have some financial flexibility where if we wanted to add someone towards the deadline, a big bat or, a big pitcher, we have a lot of flexibility for 2032, with I think almost $60 million in room available, and really only a couple of pieces we'll have to replace. But that is a worry of mine, that we've sort of pushed the chips in maybe a little too soon. But again, I think it's one of those things where, there are still potential guys that we're looking at. Again, Mendoza's a guy that we still think maybe he can fill out and become a big bat for us in the future. Santiago Garcia still has some work to go. He's starting to run out of time on the clock. We've got Vincent Thompson, who there's a custom filter on here. That's why I was like, "Where's Vinny?" We've obviously got Vincent Thompson, our big number one pick from last year, that we're still not seeing a whole heck of a lot of development from, but he's 19. He's having a pretty good time back from injury down in the PWBL. We have seen, his current's gone up a little bit. His contact has gone up 5, so we're starting to see signs of life. Obviously, that's a big piece we're waiting for. What ends up happening? TJ Nickerson is a guy that, again, an interesting profile. Could we get some TCR love on the contact side? Or maybe, for the love of God, him figure out how to play defense? That could be an interesting piece. So we still have options. Nolan Ho's a guy. I feel like we've had him for 5 years, and he's only 21. Again, a lot of room to go here. But I do think we still have pieces there. We still have money available. We still have options of what we can do. But you know what? It's one of those things where I think the one thing I've learned about TGS is that you can second guess everything you can do. And the hardest part for me, and I've said this in previous episodes, is that recognition of when to go and when to say, okay. And I think a lot of that for us was we have a top 5 offensive team where we were returning everybody with the exception of our starting catcher, and we added Cody Mondesi to that group. So offensively, we're set, barring injuries. And again, we've got, as you've seen when we went through, we've got extra players who are ready to step in. But it's how do we get better with the pitching? How do we strike more guys out, keep more guys off base? It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to get through the spring. Obviously, hopefully, we're hoping for minimal impact. We've already lost Josh McDunn to a torn rotator cuff. He's going to be out for 4 months. He was a guy that was battling for that 5th spot in the rotation, and it's now going to be out of that, obviously. We've got a couple guys banged up. So we'll see. It's a huge time. We got to try to get through the spring and see what we're going to do, and then hopefully, 2031. The way I look, again, right, we've said it in the last couple episodes. Can we find those 10 extra wins and get there? And there's a long way to go between now and then, but we'll see. That's going to do it for this episode of The Big Red Machine. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep swinging for the fences.